we're abundant people, and we just have to start appreciating, wake up each day in gratitude for the breath that we have, for the sun that rose that day, and appreciate what you have, because what you appreciate appreciates.
Welcome to Conscious Conversations with Amy Woodall and the Collective. I'm Amy Woodall, and we are so happy that you have landed here with us today. The whole premise of this show was to create a bridge between the seekers and the teachers. And in Conscious Conversations, we simply want to talk about real aspects of life that we are all faced with. The joys, the triumphs, the challenges, the stuck points, whether that's at work or at home or in the world at large. I believe that everyone who is listening to this show really gives a damn about being a good human from the inside out. And we want to bring you conversations that matter and help you do just that. You know, we're really passionate about helping you become more conscious in nearly every area of life. Sometimes that is in your work life, your home life. And today we're going to be talking about your financial life and beyond, and how that really connects to the deeper root of consciousness within each of us. You know, money is this funny thing that when we don't have it, we think it's the only thing that matters. When we do have it, we kind of forget, that anything else matters. And we have an expert with us today that this is his business. He helps people manage their wealth, but more importantly, manage it from a conscious perspective with these other aspects of life intertwined. Our guest today is Tim Jai Baker, and he is the CEO and founder of Luminous Wealth. And Jai is the first ever financial, advisor that we've ever had on the show. And the reason is because his take is so different than what we often see. And it's so aligned with what we're passionate about bringing to the world here at Conscious Habit. So I'm so excited to have this conscious wealth, conscious money conversation with you today, Jai. Welcome to the show.
Amy, thanks for having me on today. I look forward to this enlightening conversation.
Yeah. I want to start off with just your own story of how you got into the world of finances, how you got into the world of money, and how your own perspective or relationship has shifted to a more conscious one than maybe it did when you first got going.
Hmm. Wow, that's a broad question.
Where to
Uh,
start?
yeah, well, where to start really is where everything starts, and that is in your programming. So first of all, I had good programming with money. I mean, I grew up in a blue collar type of atmosphere, very middle class, but we always felt like we had everything, and there was nothing that we couldn't get or achieve. I even remember having a passbook savings account when I was like 6 or 7 years old. And I had a next door great uncle who worked at a bank, and he would bring home bags of money, quarters and dimes and nickels. And we would sit there and go through these things and collect based on their dates and where they were minted. And then we cleaned them up and we filled up these money books. And so I was always used to and finding money as a friendly and fun thing to have. But, I got into this field in February 1981, and it started out with Prudential Insurance Company. And that was an interesting time because inflation was 10%, unemployment was 10%, money market yields was 21%, your 30-year mortgage rate was 19.45%. And so it was an interesting time to be in that business because the insurance companies were creating a lot of new products. They were creating universal life contracts, so they could take advantage of high interest rates back then. They would pay 14% on your cash value of your life policy. Also, people wanted to invest in the stock markets, and so they created variable life policies in that time. So for me, I hated what I was doing. I was a rookie agent in the state of South Carolina and what I did for that particular year, but I quit after a year because I hated the insurance business. I just didn't like it. But it taught me lifelong lessons that I carry to this day, and seeing how that watch was made by the insurance companies. I spent 7 years at a financial planning firm, and that was back in the mid 80s. And that's when the infancy of financial planning was really getting started. And then I worked with a Wall Street regional firm, Legg Mason Wood Walker. And so I was with them for 7 years. And that's where I learned where the Wall Street watch was made. I spent about 16 months with Prudential Securities, and I couldn't stand with that, being with that big behemoth. At the time, it was very impersonal. And so that's what launched me into having my own firm. I first, in 1997, launched it as a multi-generational financial planning office with just me and an assistant. And through the years, I was using my client meetings as my feedback loop for the information needed to understand what else I needed to provide those folks to enhance their wealth journey with us. And so through time, I organically grew and I added a CPA. Then I added another CPA on staff. Then I hired an attorney on our staff. Then I brought in a real estate advisor that didn't charge commissions to our clients. Then I brought in another portfolio manager. And before I sold it almost 5 years ago now, I brought in an Ayurvedic practitioner for mind, body, spirit work. So we were a fee-only financial planning firm to our clients, and we would follow their mission statements. And we were acting as their fiduciary. We're placing their interest ahead of ours because that's where most of the conflict is in the financial landscape with the consumer. Only 1 out of 10 people that the consumer comes in contact with in the financial field is truly a fee-only advisor. The rest have some type of conflict of interest with some insurance licenses or even security licenses where they're making commissions. It's a field that's fraught with lack of integrity, lack of morality, and they're there just to serve their own profits. Now, they don't mind it if you make money, but they're going to make theirs first, and then the brokers in the middle, they're going to make theirs second, and the consumer is third in line. And so that's what we were bringing to light.
I appreciate that approach because I think many of us, probably many listeners, maybe you have somebody you love who is not fee only, but we've all gotten not necessarily intentional bad advice, but I think misguided bad advice because that's what they were taught, to go out and do. And they were really taught this is what's best for that person. And ultimately it wasn't. But back to this initial firm that you built, it sounds like the goal there was how do we have an effect or an impact on people in all the places that are going to matter to them financially? How do we congregate, all of these experts so that we're all rowing in the same direction and we're all giving good advice rowing in the same direction, rather than we've got an attorney who says, no, 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 your accountant's an idiot. Here's what you need to do. And the accountant says, no, 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 your financial advisor's an idiot. Here's what you need to do. So what kind of shift did you see happen just by taking that conscious approach in your first business?
Well, you hit the nail on the head, because that's the way most people in the world work or operate with their financial service people. Most people have maybe 2 or 3 different investment advisors that they run around collecting the information and services from. They probably have had 4 or 5 different insurance contracts that they randomly collected through the years when they let the insurance agent slip through their door. That person's never talked to the estate planning attorney. Their CPA has never talked to their investment advisors except at tax time when there's missing 1099 information. Only 1 out of 3 people have a financial plan developed, and then very few develop it and follow up with it and monitor it on a year-by-year basis. And certainly nobody's talked to the family psychiatrist. So we physically run around taking the most time to collect all of these services and paying the most fees for them. And to your point, everybody wants to be either the man or woman in charge of the family decisions. And so when those strategies are offered to the family, there's some other advisors that's knocking that suggestion down. And so there's a lot of conflict there. And what I found in the model that we created was that no one of us, me or my attorney or CPAs, there's no one of us that's so special that we can't individually be replicated in the United States. We have a lot of brilliant attorneys, a lot of brilliant CPAs, investment advisors, financial planners, but we have very few teams of these people that operate together on a daily basis following that family mission statement. That's where the magic is, because at the end of the day, this team can be collegially combative and want to put their strategy out before the rest of the team. But at the end of the day, there's going to be one best strategy for that family. And then that's what's going to be offered up and to the family. So they're philosophically aligned. There's no conflict. There's a lot of confidence in what's being developed. And so it's closely aligned with their family mission statement, which follows the family values and the goals that they have in their lives.
And what was the shift for you where obviously very good at what you do, you could kind of see the holes in each one of those places that you started off your career, knew how you wanted it to be different, used the feedback loop of client experience to help you continue to grow, and also had good money hardwiring. I love that you use those words that you found money friendly and fun. And I am so jealous because that is not how I grew up with money. Money was scarce and not to be talked about. And so I love the hardwiring for you. In selling your business 5 years ago, and now beginning Luminous Wealth that has truly a conscious into this of the well-being of the human, not just the financial acumen of the human. What has been that journey for you? You've been given the name Jai, so that is certainly part of your spiritual journey. But where has the consciousness of money? What is that story for you?
Well, when I look back at my body of work in my first career, I felt like, because I worked with a lot of these families for 30 years or more, and I felt like if we met or exceeded their financial goals, they would be contented, have joy in their life. And what I found was that one of my wealthiest clients was my most stressed out client. He had Bell palsy in one half of his face. He had retired early as the CEO of a publicly traded company. Now, thank God his face was restored with health, full health, but he was still my most stressed out client. And what I noticed was most of my other clients' contentment was also a bit stressful. And so this go around with the new work that we're doing at Luminous Wealth, I want to provide an offering to help heal that condition of the human experience. And so what I've done is I've replicated the almost 4 decades of evidence-based wealth management team that I had with a CPA, an attorney, a real estate advisor, myself as a wealth manager, planner. But what I've done is I've surrounded this wealth team with what I call the Blue Zone research team, those cultures that have longevity and the highest quality of lives. And so what I've brought in on my Blue Zone team is a consciousness mindfulness advisor. I have 2 personal trainers. I have a hypnotherapist. I have a nutritional team. I have a spiritual advisor, lifestyle coach. And so I feel like what we're able to do here is really return to the etymology of what wealth meant. Back in 1250 AD, the word wealth meant, which was spelled W-E-A-L-E, the etymology of it meant prosperity, health, and well-being. And in the 1400s, the Dutch dumbed it down to just money. And that's what we brought forward to today. So when we think of, somebody who's successful, what are we thinking about? Somebody who has the most money. But you can have $1 billion, and if you're on lung machines and you've got a nasty personality and nobody wants to have a relationship with you, that's not wealth. And so really all I'm doing at Luminous Wealth is returning to the etymology of what wealth really means, because you can't manage money in a silo. These major aspects in the areas we're working with have an interrelated quality to them. Your health can affect your finances. Your relationships can affect your estate planning choices of where you're going to give your money to. Your career can affect your mental and physical health. And so all we're doing with the way that we're approaching this is we're helping money be right-sized in our life. Because right now in America, it's not just the elephant in the room for most people, it's the room. and we don't have a good relationship with money in the United States. We represent 4.2% of the world's population, and yet we've created 62% of the world's business valuation. And yet we have documentaries showing that, we have a retirement dilemma in America, that we don't have a good relationship with it. And that was proved out to me, I don't know, it was about 12 or so years ago. I was having a luncheon with a radiology clinic I was working with. And on that particular day, I was just working with the executive staff. They had 68 physicians. They had a retirement plan. I was managing the retirement plan and working with many of the physicians as private clients. But this particular day, I just wanted to have a meeting with the executive staff. And so there was 14 of them, and we were all at one long lunch table. And halfway into lunch, I heard somebody say something negative about money. And I don't know what came over me. I'd never thought about this before, but I just said impromptu, I said, we're going to pause lunch here for a minute, and we're going to take a couple of deep breaths, and we're going to get settled in our bodies. We're going to clear our minds. We're not going to think about what we have to do after lunch or what happened this morning. And so I had them take 3 deep breaths, and I said, close your eyes, and I'm going to say a word to you in a moment, and you're going to either have a neutral, negative, or positive sensation in your body, and I want you to feel where that is. And so I got them settled down, and as they got quiet, I said the word money. And I said, just hang in there with it for a minute or two and see where you're feeling this and what you're feeling. And I said, before you open your eyes, I want you to raise your hand, and who here had a negative sensation about money? Now, these people were making, in this current year's valuation, they were making anywhere between $80,000 and $300,000, and they were just one half of the family income. So this is a pretty good economic swath of Americans, I would think you would agree with. So how many out of those 14 do you think had a negative sensation about money?
Ooh, I would say majority, probably majority.
All 14.
Wow.
So if you're having a negative sensation about money, it's kind of like you're having a negative sensation or feeling towards your partner. You're just an accident looking for a place to happen. And that's the way Americans are with money. And so we have to change this, because money is not negative. Money is a neutral tool. It's like nuclear power. You can either light up cities with it, or you can blow up people with it. It's the character through the use of the tool itself that makes it appear good or bad. But it's just a neutral tool with stored energy.
There's a book by Kyle Cease called The Illusion of Money that I remember reading a handful of years ago. And I loved the very similar to your sentiment, Jai. It's like money is a tool. It is not the reflection of worthiness. And I think that that's what many of us have based on hardwiring. And so I'm curious, what are the biggest lies that you have seen with clients and their belief about money and what they think it means?
I was working with 155 families. Back then, our minimum account was 2 million, and we were working with families from 2 to $15 million. So they had the financial resources, but what they didn't have was the balance in their life that was needed. A lot of it was just an unconscious way of handling their money. Before they came to us, they didn't have a plan. They weren't focused. They didn't know how to respect it. And what we were doing was bringing them organization clarity to what they could do with their resources so that they could maximize those resources in their life. I mean, a person could have, $3 million in assets, and they think they've got the world by the tail. But if they're spending, $400,000 a year, that's not going to last them many years. And so most people don't know whether their money is going to last in their lives or not, because most people haven't developed a financial plan, and they haven't done it with fair assumptions of life, because most people don't know how the financial plans are developed anyway, and what the brains behind them are. I mean, most of the people that are using the financial advisors that are using these financial tools unaware of how they work and what a good score is and what a bad score is. And it's really sad.
Ladies, imagine taking time away to work on you. Meditation, yoga, transformational work, a chance to have grand adventures and build lasting relationships. Desiree Garcia and I founded High Vibe Tribe Retreats to create just that. And if you're curious about joining us on our next retreat, head over to highvibetriberetreat.com, link in the show notes. It is so interesting for us to reflect on. I did a meditate on this episode, which are like mini-sodes, like 10 minutes or less. And it was on conscious money. It's not my expertise at all, but I think it's helpful for us to reflect on our relationship with any aspect of our life is a reflection of what we think we're worthy of having or achieving. So if I could have an incredibly low, feeling of worth within myself and still go out and kill it and make a bunch of money, but I will figure out subconsciously how to get rid of it because I will feel as though I'm not worthy of really having it. And this is true in relationships. If I have a low self-worth, then I'm going to attract the worst of the worst and be like, it's only, only the terrible guys or the single guys, you can't attract, or health. It could be if I have an incredibly low self-worth, then health is going to be something I always struggle with. And so whatever that aspect of it is of life, I love that your new firm, the Luminous Wealth, that you're hitting all of those aspects because they are a deep reflection. Our relationship with each of those areas are meaningful and connected for sure.
It all starts with the fact that today, America is the greatest financial worth, and yet we're spiritually bankrupt. And that's where all of this starts from. This is where the confidence that you then achieve in your life. And it's that feeling of feeling connected with consciousness, with your higher self, with God, whatever term you want to use to explain your non-physical self, and feeling that you can be tapped into the infinite intelligence of all of consciousness and bringing that intelligence into your human experience and having a balance between the two. It's not all one or the other. And that's what we're providing clients is to help them get that balance in their life and to get that foundation. In the financial field, the investment advisor is mandated to know thy client. And they do this typically with 10 questions, oversimplified questions. And it's so elementary and it's so laughable to me that, we're supposed to ask 10 questions and now we know the client, when in fact, the clients usually don't know themselves. And so our foundation is to start with to know thyself, because to know thyself is to know all of reality. It knows all of this human experience, but you're then tapped into knowing that who your eternal self is. And so when you get to that state and you know that you're tapped into this eternal light, you can then start to know thyself that's been programmed in this human experience, because we all been programmed through age 7. And, our minds were in this theta frequency from birth to age 7. And in that state, your mind can't say no to anything in your environment. And so what we wind up living is and becoming is our minds are the garbage bin of everybody else's desires and limitations. And, if we don't self-reflect, we're going to live a life that's been fated to us if we don't change things. But we do have the ability to rewire our brains, to reprogram ourselves that's closer in line with the values of our higher self, and to be able to live that authentic life. And so for most people, they get to some phase of their life, whether it's their early 20s, late 20s, 30s, and it's just not working for them. The external world's not working for them. And so they will probably feel like they're backing up 2 or 3 steps in their life, but they've got to go back and get that foundation built. They've got to build those inner securities that will be able to match the outer securities that they desire. And so this awakening that needs to take place in this human experience is so vital in order for you to, live the really one best version of yourself that you're here to do.
Hmm. It is, I mean, we have talked about it on the show for years. It's the work of conscious habit in the world of this 95% of our subconscious mind creates it literally creates how we see, experience, dance with the world around us. And yet, many of us believe that we are just a victim to circumstance, not understanding that our hardwiring has contributed to that significantly. And I would say it's probably 80-20. Like there's 20% of things that are just bad deals that are handed to us, but 80% is really how we respond to those and that curiosity of how those automatic patterns that were developed from age 0 to 7. And some psychologists even say 3. There's sort of this, some think it's, so hardwired by 3, but 7 is the traditional answer, how it's just like a tape replaying over and over again in our lives. And so, in yourself, in this own work for you, was there a moment in time when you were like, I've got the financial piece locked down and maybe even other aspects of the world, but the spiritual piece, I need to find that. Was there a personal journey for you that inspired now that this work that you integrate with others?
It came in 97, which is interesting that spiritual awakening or path that I started to walk down coincided with when I started my own firm. So they had something to do with each other, but it began when I learned my meditation techniques. I did it with Dr. Deepak Chopra, and I first went to a local teacher in Bedford, Virginia, and learned my mantra meditation technique. Then I spent 8 days with Dr. Chopra over in Wollongong, Australia, where we learned the advanced chakra techniques of meditation. We meditate for 2 hours in the morning, 2 hours in the afternoon. We'd recapitulate at night and have lectures and entertainment throughout the day. But it's been through that daily practice through time that this awakening has happened for me. And I tell you that enlightenment is not a destination, it's a journey. Just when you think you've got everything figured out and you're rocking along, there's something that's going to trigger you, and you're going to be pulled back into the weightiness of humanity. And so for me, it's meditation has been the core aspect of who I've become through times. And I know it's radically changed everything about who I am, even down to the vibration of my voice. And most people in America, don't meditate. We were taught to pray, or we were, not involved at all with our connection with the God state. And for most of us, the power is out there, outside of us somewhere, when in fact the power is within us. We're the choice makers of our lives. We're not victims of our circumstances. And so once that shift takes place from the outer world and I'm the victim to the inner world and I hold all the power, that's where the major shift takes place. And then it's just grooming and honing that through meditation, through breath work, through hypnosis, or what I call dehypnosis, because we were programmed. Now we have to deprogram ourselves and connect back with that higher self of who we are. That's the process. And that's what led me to where I am now. I had, other experiences along the way that accelerated some of that work that I've done on myself, but that's just really been the basics. And for a lot of people, they will come to me and they will say, meditation's hard. I go, well, golf for me was hard till it wasn't. And they said, well, I can't spend an hour of my morning in meditation. I need my sleep. Well, I wear this Whoop watch now, and I can see on my sleep monitor when I'm in my hour-long or 90-minute-long meditation, 90 to 95% of my meditation is in REM. Meditation is going to give you your best sleep. And then I have people say, well, I've been meditating, but it's just not working for me. It's not changing my life. I go, well, how often are you meditating? They said, well, every weekend I'm putting in my hour of meditation, 1 or 2 days. I said, you may not know much about pro golf, but you probably know the name Tiger Woods. I said, if Tiger Woods had only played weekend golf growing up, you would never have heard of Tiger Woods. You have to embody in this temple what you're tapping into. And that's not a part-time thing. You don't brush your teeth once or twice a week. It has to become who you are. And you have to tap into that. And we've gotten so far away from this in our culture that, we are in the human time frame. We are probably at our maximum of just being materialist in this material world and lacking the spiritual aspect of who we are, which is so infinite and powerful. I see an upswing from this bottoming in this material culture that we're in right now. And there's a lot of light I see with the retreats that I go to and the amount of people that come to these retreats that's coming forward, and it's coming fast, and it needs to, because if we don't change who we are and how we're being, the planet's just going to kick us off.
It is, yeah, and back to the financial aspect. It's a ripple effect of that inner world, that's happening around us. I recently embarked on a silent retreat where we spent, I wish it was more. We spent 60 hours in silence, but even in that, to slow down and have no access to technology, no phone at your fingertips. It was encouraged not to kind of lose ourselves in books, but maybe you read for 10 minutes to inspire some writing or some deeper understanding or a deeper meditation. And what was incredibly apparent in that 60 hours is how much habit energy drives us, where we just do without really being connected to it. I found myself looking at the time. Like, there was one clock in this entire retreat center, and you bet your ass the second I walked by it, I needed to know what time it was. What time is it? Am I hungry? Is it time for, am I hungry? Am I tired? Do I need a nap? I would look at the clock to give me this feedback, and we look at the world that way to tell us what we should think or feel and embody, and coming more connected to this spiritual aspect of yourself. I love that you meditate for, an hour to 90 minutes a day. Listeners, even if it's 15 minutes a day, at one point in time, I had a 15-minute twice a day meditation. It changed my life. It is just creating space to honor the soul of who you are, to regulate your nervous system, and to write your own thinking before you go off into the world and do and say something stupid that you don't mean. That is ultimately what meditation, allows us to have. Is this something, Jai, do you incorporate this? Is this a requirement for people working with you? Is it like, okay, great, if we're going to work with you, if we're going to manage your money, then you got to get to the mat? Like, what are some of the requirements for the clients that you take on now?
Well, the only requirements are that we manage all of their financial resources that are available to manage, that they work with our CPA, because and we don't fire stupid CPAs. We fire CPAs that are not in our organization, that's talking with us every day, that knows all the strategies that we need to apply with our clients, and that they engage with our estate planning attorney. So that's my formula, because to me, the wealth team is the magic, not the single components of the wealth team. But when it comes to our consciousness and the other aspects of who we are, we have to meet everybody where they are. Some people just aren't ready in their life right now for, some of the things that we're doing. What we do is we provide them a half hour to an hour consultation with each one of our Blue Zone research specialists, and they consult with them for those hours. And hopefully they'll be able to take with them for the rest of the year something of real value if they don't engage with them. But to the extent that, there's something that's sparking their soul to investigate more, then they can work with these advisors on an a la carte basis and go deeper. So we just want to be there and be that nudge to conscious awakening, but we're not going to force anybody before they're ready. If the student's not ready, it doesn't matter what we preach. And the person has to be ready, and not just ready, but thirsting for something more than what they're getting in their external world.
I wanted a few things I'd love to leave our listeners with. If they are listening right now and they think, you know what, I have Maybe they have a roller coaster relationship with money. Maybe they feel like there's plenty stowed away. I know that I have clients I've coached who, as you said, have like made more money than they've ever made. And yet they're still unhappy, but also still fearful that the rug could get pulled out from underneath them. So that's like they have a lot of fear wrapped around that relationship with money. What advice would you give those folks? Where do you recommend they start? Is there an examination for them to go through? Is there books you recommend? If they sense there is that fear, like those 14 surgeons that you spoke to, what do they do with that?
Well, actually, they can get some of this information on my website. I have in resources section a list of books and places to go to for this. They can also go to my website and without a charge, they can take a human archetype assessment. This is to help them to know thyself, and they'll get a report after a 46 question assessment. They'll get a report right away with 2 videos describing who they are, and it'll give them a chance to explore those aspects. Usually when I'm going over these studies with usually a couple in my conference room, I'll say, what did you think about the assessment? And this one person will say, well, 95% of that was me, but this other thing over here, that's not me at all. And usually the spouse is on the other side of the table with a big smile and they're pointing their finger saying, that's exactly who you are. Because what this assessment will show is not only are those strengths that you had that served your life very well, but it'll also reveal your blind spots. Those things that you are blaming on the external world, but they keep happening in the external world. But it's within us, it's creating those patterns and those bad outcomes. And so it's going to reveal those biases. I mean, and that's what makes it a bias, is that it's a blind spot. You don't recognize it. Just like fire doesn't know itself to be hot, or water doesn't know itself to be wet. When you're so much of that behavior pattern, you don't recognize it as being you. And so that's a great start. And it will give you a lot of really good information by a company called DNA Behavior, which is out of Atlanta, Georgia. Hugh Massey was the mastermind developing these studies. He's originally from Australia. And that's been a very valuable tool to work with.
Know thyself, as you mentioned, right? What a great tool to help people do that more, intentionally. Listeners, I really encourage you to just look at your relationship with money as if you would a relationship with a partner, like you mentioned, Jai, to say, hey, if this were like your partner, as you mentioned, it's an accident waiting to happen. What does your relationship look like with money? I think similar to what Jai mentioned, maybe ask yourself, just sit still, get your body still, and think about money and notice, does it create discomfort or fear or uncertainty within your body? That is such a good indicator that there is some healing to do, both likely with your relationship with yourself and your view of your own worthiness, but also your relationship with money in the world. And then also, as Jai shared with us, this connection to the spirituality of like who we are. What is our connection point, this relationship within ourselves? As we know, I mean, we're always preaching this piece of it. You are stuck with you every second of every day for your whole life. You can never escape yourself. So you might as well create a nice, comfy home within you, a deeper connection to the spirit of who you are, and not just what you have in your bank account, in, any aspect of life. It's going to make life so much richer. So Jai, anything else you want to leave our audience with? Any other parting wisdom you'd like to share before we wrap up this episode?
We're all abundant. We are all abundant. There is no lack. I mean, for the person who doesn't have that much in their bank account, they can walk down any street of America without charge. There's all these free road systems. We have these incredible national parks and natural spaces to be in and enjoy. We have all these beautiful oceans and coastlines and sands and beaches. We have all of these libraries. Most street people or homeless people at least even have a cell phone. And if you have that, you're living a life better than the King of England did 200 years ago, because a person on the street can at least go to the emergency room if it gets that really bad for their health, and they have more information in their hand than the Apollo that went to the moon. And so we're abundant people, and we just have to start appreciating, wake up each day in gratitude for the breath that we have, for the sun that rose that day, and appreciate what you have, because what you appreciate appreciates.
Recognize the abundance and the harmony all around you. It's definitely nature is a good teacher for that, for sure. Thank you for sharing your insight and your wisdom and talking about that dirty thing, money, that we're never supposed to talk about, but giving us a good conscious lens, for how to see that and how to experience it in our life. So thank you, Jai, for joining us.
Thank you, Amy. Have a great day.
Thank you for listening to Conscious Conversations. We are so grateful that you've spent this time with us. And if you loved this episode, we invite you to consider liking, sharing, rating, reviewing the show so that more people can find us. And if you have the desire to connect with more like-hearted humans like you on this planet, come join us in the PFN community under Conscious Conversations.